瀑布暗流吞人，2死1失踪。高屏地区昨天发生3起戏水民众溺水意外。
17号星期天，4个人一起来玩水，疑似张姓女子在浮潜时被暗流卷走。
没想到其中一人遭到漩涡卷入，其他2人为了救他，也跟着遇难。当时在一旁的男性女子赶紧对外求援。
专心浮潜的女子太靠近瀑布，突然被强劲暗流卷向瀑布。2男听到呼救，游上前想拉人，却一起被吸入潭中。
光是上山，警消就花了2个多小时，3点半左右抵达。就在4点50分，先找到吴姓男子，再隔1个小时找到张姓女子，但双双死亡。
因为瀑布的水一直持续下来，它是形成一个漩涡。这人的话就是在底下一直这样。
这个湖哦，你一游下去，你很少人能够游得上。
我们的潜水是要打那个定锚的那个绳子才能进去，要不然的话怕水那个被漩涡人被卷进去这样。
爱玩水的朋友都会劝导他们，千万不要下水。但是讲归讲，他们还是不会听。就部落这一条路，看能不能有管制了。
由于沙拉湾已经发生好几次溺毙意外事件，当地族人也希望可以进行管制。
大家好，我是小飞。In this video, I'm going to do a case study on the accident that happened in Shalawan Waterfall 6 years ago. The purpose of this video is not to blame any of the victims. What happened has happened, but rather to identify the contributing actions and environmental factors which led to this accident. We'll talk about how it happened and how it could be prevented so that if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, you'll know what to do in order to avoid another accident. There's nothing unique or special about the pool in Shalawan Waterfall or the water level that day. The lessons we learn here will apply to everywhere. So please listen closely and watch the video until the end, because what I say here might just save your life. Shalawan Waterfall is a beautiful waterfall in southern Taiwan in the Maja township of Pingdong or Jiufawan. It's a place that's very dear and close to my heart as I have been there many times, and when I lived in Kaohsiung, this was my favorite place to go visit and play in the water.
沙拉湾瀑布高15公尺，水底最深12公尺。
下雨后，瀑布高达15公尺，水中最深的地方也达到12公尺深。
I have no idea where these numbers came from. The pool of the waterfall is around 500 meters above sea level. However, the waterfall itself is around 30 to 40 meters tall, and the pool is not very deep. The absolute deepest point below the waterfall is about 3.5 meters, or at least it was in 2016. The way I know the depth of the waterfall is because I have swam under it and checked. We like to jump from the right side, and it is about an 8-9 meter jump, and to do that you have to jump a little bit to the right side to go more towards the waterfall, because if you go left it will not be deep enough to jump. Previously, I'd also jumped from the left side, but it is not as easy place to climb up, so I don't go there as often. One of the most prominent features of this waterfall that everybody notices when they first visit it is the sandbar. This sandbar is a natural place for everybody to gather and hang out. Some people camp there or go fishing there. But other than this spot, there isn't really any location that you can get into the water from. The bank on the south side of the waterfall is very steep. You can jump into the waterfall from there, but you can't climb back up. So what everybody does when they get to the waterfall is they have to cross this small drainage channel on the south side of the island, and then they'll spend most of the time on the island and enter the water from the island. Closed shortly after this accident and after reopening a few months ago, is more commonly known as太古拉筏斯瀑布. It's a little bit difficult for me to change names in my head overnight, so please excuse me if in this video I often still refer to it as Shalawan Waterfall. To be clear though, these two are the same place. The following is based entirely off of news coverage. It may not be the exact series of events that took place, however it is at least a plausible one so we can still use it as a case study and learn from it. For the sake of this analysis, I'm going to assume that everybody involved is a good swimmer. If you are not a good swimmer, then the correct thing to do is whenever you are near any body of water that is deeper than your head, what you need to be doing is wearing a life jacket. A life jacket will save your life. The day of the accident, Shalawan Waterfall had a good flow going. This is considered a high flow at Shalawan Waterfall, but is not an extreme flow. It commonly reaches this level. On the day of the accident, our 4 adventurers, they would have climbed down to the waterfall and swam across this little inlet and then spent some time on the island. After relaxing there for a bit, one of them decided to go in. While standing on this island, the waterfall is very loud, and there's going to be a lot of wind. Climbing into the water in those conditions is quite brave. So I will assume that the person going into the water is a competent swimmer, or else they probably would not have gone in. From this island, the current moves in generally two directions. One is to the outlet in the north, and the other is to the outlet in the south. The outlet in the north has a much weaker flow to it because most of that water is coming from an adjacent waterfall, whereas the outlet in the south is where the majority of the flow from Shalawan Waterfall flows out into the river below. They would have gotten into the water at the north end of the island and walked out a short distance. This is where things start to get complicated, and this is also where it becomes very important to understand the dynamics of a waterfall pool and where the currents are going to be. In Shalawan Waterfall, we have a lot of water coming down from the top of the waterfall, which just simply splashes into the pool and radiates outward. It radiates out in a fan pattern. However, it only has a small outlet in the southern part of the pool where the water can actually escape from. So all of the water that has radiated outward away from that outlet has to find another way to get there. Water on the right side of the island will go straight down. It has a farther distance to travel where it will hit that wall and bounce off, creating a little bit of a turbulent region down there against the wall, and then it will flow laterally toward the outlet. This doesn't affect the water in the middle of the pool, which is flowing away from the waterfall. However, it does create a circular motion on the edges. So the water on the right will flow down along the rocks and then to the outlet, and the water in the left, the top left of the island, that will flow back towards the waterfall before being pushed towards the outlet. I know this firsthand because the very first time I went to Shalawan in 2013, there was a flow that is a very similar size to the day of this accident, and I myself jumped into the water and ended up swimming towards the waterfall. Very quickly, I found to my surprise, because I didn't know that much at the time, that I was being dragged towards the waterfall. This flow was very, very strong, and I was unable to swim against it. The way I was able to save myself is to use the same principle that would use in an ocean rip current. Instead of swimming against the current, what you do is swim laterally to it. Swim at a right angle to the way the water is pulling you, and you will break that current and go into a different current. In this case, it will take you away from the rocks towards the center of the pool, which then pushes you back the direction you came from. If instead you try to swim against the current, you'll quickly find that you are not strong enough, you will tire yourself out, or you will panic and possibly drown. On the day of the accident, the first person went into the water and was being dragged out, and then immediately two people jumped in to save her. What I'm about to say now is not very nice, but it is very important, so I really want people to listen. You cannot save a panicking person in the water without equipment. It is not possible. If you don't have equipment, you should under no circumstances ever jump into the water to save a person who is panicking. They are going to climb on top of you to get purchase and push you under. They're not doing it intentionally, they are panicking. What you should do instead is throw something to them, such as a throw bag, or in the case where they're unable to even catch your rope, you can grab a flotation device and swim out there to save them. If you do that, your flotation device needs to have enough buoyancy to hold two people. This is not a nice thing to hear, and nobody likes knowing it. We all want to be able to save somebody if they are in the water drowning, but if you do that, you are only making yourself another victim. And we look at the drowning statistics in Taiwan, a huge number of them is attempted rescues that went wrong. If the victim goes unconscious and then you're able to pull them out and give them CPR, that is still a much better chance of a rescue than if you jump in and you both drown and nobody pulls you out and none of you get CPR. So please throw something to somebody, and just, you don't even need to throw any random thing. If you're going to the water, especially waterfalls and rivers where there are currents, you should be carrying a throw bag. A throw bag is a very simple device. It is just a rope in a bag, something that you can hold one end of, throw the other, a person can catch it, and you can pull them towards you or away from any danger. If you don't have a throw bag, you weren't prepared for it, it happened accidentally. Another thing you can throw is a waterproof bag. A waterproof bag, you just roll it up, close it, throw it in. It does float, or if it is not a strong current situation, if they're too far away, you can swim out till you're near them, and then you throw it to them, and then you swim away. You do not get close enough to them to a point where they can grab you, because they will climb onto you, searching for purchase, and they will push you under. If that does happen to you, though, what you should do is swim down. A drowning person who has latched onto you and is trying to climb on top of you, when they're panicked, if you swim down, they will let go because you are no longer providing them buoyancy. A much better alternative, though, is to not panic and instead self-rescue. Now, there are many things you can do to self-rescue, but the first thing I would recommend is you read this book. This book was written by Like a Fish. I'm a huge fan of his. I will put a link to his page down at the bottom. The challenges we face in the water during abnormal conditions are not intuitive. That is why people panic, because there isn't an intuitive solution out of it. These things need to be learned, and the first thing that you can do to learn it, an easy way to do it at home, is to just read a book. So if you are in that situation and you are trying to save yourself, there is 3 ways out of it. The first way is the way that I chose, which is to swim laterally across the current, get to a place where the current changes, and then ride that current back in the direction you want to go. Another way is to swim down under the current. If you look at this pool, the currents are surface currents. I know we hear a lot in the news. We hear so much stuff in the news about underwater currents and all these things. In pools under these waterfalls, it pretty much doesn't happen. If the exit to the waterfall, where the water is flowing out, is about this deep, then that is how deep the currents are. You swim under that, and there is pretty much no current. You can just swim wherever you want, and then you can get out. So practice your underwater swimming. It is a very, very important way to get out of a situation like that. Even under a waterfall, directly under the big waterfall where all that water is coming down, the current does not penetrate very deeply. Once you're about a meter under that waterfall, it will not be that strong. You can just go under it. We do this all the time when we try to swim towards the waterfall because the water is pushing us out. It is impossible to do. So what I do is I swim under it until I get to the waterfall and go up, and then I'm fine and I let it push me out, which is also the next way to get out of this situation. If you're wearing a life jacket, for example, you would not have been able to swim down. So what you can do is actually simply just ride that current back to the waterfall. When you get to the waterfall, you are going to take a pounding. It is going to come down and it is going to throw you around. You're going to feel like you're in a washing machine. However, it is then going to spit you out and take you back down to where you came from. So actually, one of the things you can do in this situation when you find yourself unable to beat the current is actually to do nothing. When you get to the waterfall, just hold your breath, let it spit you out, and then get back to where you're trying to go. There is one caveat, though, to that recommendation, which is that you do not want to be behind the waterfall. When you end up between the waterfall and the rock wall behind it, those currents are moving towards the wall, and they do not push you out of the pool. So you want to get yourself in front of the waterfall. So maneuver yourself as much as you can, so when you enter the waterfall, you're going into the front. Or when you're in it, just wave your hands, go crazy, and it can be disorienting sometimes. You can't see anything, the water's coming down. It's hard to understand the orientation sometimes. But if you get towards the front of the waterfall, it'll just spit you right out, and you'll be fine. Here is a top-down visualization of the waterfall, and I want you to look at the waterfall itself and try to look at the waves, and especially look under the water. You can see the white bubbles. That white part, the bubbles under the water, you can see that on the right side it has a long stream, and that is the direction of the way that the water is flowing. And whereas you look on the left side, actually you don't really see any stream of bubbles coming out of there at all. That's because on the left side that water is flowing towards the waterfall, not away from it. Of course, you can see in the center that water is just being pushed straight out, and if you do swim into that, you will just be pushed straight out away from the waterfall. It won't cause you any problems. Moving down the way the water is flowing, you can see that it will flow quite fast because it's not just the water that's flowing out of the waterfall, but also the water that has flown into the waterfall from the other side. And you get to that wall in the bottom where all of these waves are crashing into it, and then they're coming back off, and this is where you'd have a situation that's much more like a beach where you have the waves coming in and out, and it create a lot of turbulence there. In the news video, it's about the body being caught in a Schwenwo like this. That's not exactly happening in that situation. The body is stuck on the bottom because bodies sink. Corpses do not float until 2 or 3 days later when it starts decomposing. That's not to discount the difficulty of the search for the body. It does look very complicated, just so you know what to expect when you get in the water and you are up against that wall. Whenever we do talk about currents, and whenever I see currents talked about in the news, they're always talked about in this motion. However, it's very rare that in a big pool like this you get this motion. Actually, they are always this motion in the pool on the surface of the water. The areas that you get this motion is in a low head dam or in a waterfall that would have the same kind of function. So it would be a short drop that goes in or slides in, and then at the very bottom it goes like this. You get a buoy line. It's a topic for another discussion, but just so you know, you don't get it in a big waterfall like this where the water falls a long distance straight into the pool. You will always get a circulating current going horizontally. You never get a vertical circulating current. One more thing to understand about Shalawan Waterfall, something that could have contributed to panic and definitely contributed to the other two people being unable to rescue the first person. The water in Shalawan Waterfall is very, very cold, especially in April. That comes from Beiraushan at over 3,000 meters elevation. When it gets into that pool, it is freezing. And when you jump into that pool, the first thing that you're going to do is go and it is a very common problem for people who enter cold water accidentally is they will take a big breath, they will inhale water, and then they will start choking and they will start to panic. Even if that does not happen, even if you enter the water and you do not panic and you're completely aware of what you're doing and you are swimming, you have much less strength. The cold water, it saps your strength, and instead of being able to swim strongly for an hour like you might think you could, you can actually just swim for a couple minutes before you are completely exhausted. And that's one of the reasons that fighting a current in these conditions is very, very difficult to do, because you are not as strong as you would normally be when your body is at a comfortable temperature. In the freezing temperature, you get much less air, you get much less oxygen, it is difficult to breathe, and you get tired quickly, you get worn out quickly. So keep that in mind whenever you are entering a waterfall. One thing that you can do to prevent yourself from having a sudden shock is when you're before you get in, splash yourself, get yourself wet first, and then get into the water, and your body will not be as shocked when you suddenly enter. It's getting too dark to film, so I'm gonna have to end this video now, but just a short recap. What happened is somebody was caught in a current that leads them towards the waterfall. They panicked and were unable to save themselves, so two of her friends jumped in to try to save them, and because it is very, 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 very difficult to save anybody in those conditions without equipment, they became victims themselves. The main takeaway you should get from there is that you cannot panic. You need to think about what you need to do, and what you need to do is not fight the current, but go a different direction or go under it. I hope that after seeing this video, it gives you some ideas so that next time you do go to a waterfall, before you jump in, you'll actually take a look to try to analyze it and think, okay, what's going to happen to me when I get in? Where is the current going? Where is it entering? Where is it exiting? And is it bouncing off anywhere and going back in? I hope you enjoyed this content. If there is a particular accident that you would like me to analyze, please comment a link to the news in the bottom, or if there's a particular waterfall that you're interested in, you link to that waterfall, and I will do my best to explain the dynamics that are happening inside the pool or what happened in that accident. Also, if you like this content and want to see more, there are 3 main ways that you can support this show. The main thing is to just click that subscribe button and the bell that tells YouTube that you like my content and they show it to more people. Another way you can support the show is with merchandise. We have clothing and also kayaks, links to those in the description. And lastly, you can support me directly through YouTube Join or Patreon. Thank you very much. I hope everybody has wonderful, safe adventures, and I hope I see you all at a waterfall sometime. Y'all have a great day.